The world of professional wrestling, both on and off screen, is truly bizarre. And as a longtime wrestling fan, sometimes I kind of forget how bizarre it is. Well, in this series, we're going to be exploring some of the strangest stories wrestling has to offer. And we want to do it in a way for people that aren't familiar with the massive rabbit hole that is the wrestling world. To do that, we're going to have me, Pete, a wrestling fan, break down these stories, and my co-host and friend Cody, who isn't a wrestling fan, is going to ask questions and crack jokes along the way. So join us as we go through the bizarre world of wrestling. This is No Pods Barred. And today we're going to be covering one of the WWE's most controversial characters ever. Today we'll be discussing the WWE run of Muhammad Hassan. Okay, so as we get into it, something that's like really important to understand about wrestling is there's a shit ton of inside terms. If at some point I accidentally use some term that you're like, what the fuck does that even mean? Just tell me. I'm trying to avoid them, but I've been in on this too long. They're like baked into my brain.
I'll make sure you fully explain them, and then it'll be unlocked for use.
The most critical term for this episode, basically what all of this centers around, is the concept of a gimmick. Most wrestlers that appear on TV, so in WWE or WCW or one of the big companies, if they're on TV, they probably have what in wrestling we call a gimmick. It's basically your character, right? Like The Undertaker is some sort of like living dead man, right? John Cena is this like borderline superhero guy. That's their gimmick.
Does everyone have a gimmick?
Basically, there are gimmicks on the scale that are a little more subtle, where it's like, because John Cena is a good example of like, well, John Cena's gimmick is that he's John Cena, but like some of them are a little less subtle, which is like what this whole episode is about. But like, man, we've had gimmicks in the past. Like there was a guy that was like in the 80s and 90s, they had a guy that was like a trash man. Like there was a hockey player who just came out wearing hockey gear. So
Frank Reynolds' character from It's Always Sunny was based on...
yeah, honest to God, there was a wrestler named Duke the Dumpster Drosy who was...
Okay.
WWE, they went through a big thing in the 80s and the early 90s of having occupation gimmicks. There was a tax man, there was a garbage collector, there was a baseball player... They just found different occupations and they made those into gimmicks. The oldest trick in the book for when you're writing basically a wrestling story is you find a good old-fashioned American good guy and you pit them against an evil bad guy. So your American hero, you got your Hulk Hogan, right? I mean, he's classic, iconic, waving the flag, doing all that. Well, in order for Hulk Hogan to get the crowd reaction he's looking for, he's got to wrestle a bad guy. And what easier way to tell that story than that guy is from the country or place we don't like. So that's really the foundation of this, because this entire episode is centered around one of the most unfortunate tellings of this story in 2004 when WWE debuted Muhammad Hassan. We got to get to the man behind the gimmick before we dig into the on-screen character that was Muhammad Hassan. The man himself is Mark Capani. And before we go in too hard on Mark Capani, it does honestly seem like he's not a terrible person. He just got put in a really tough spot, which I'll cover more in a bit. He was born in Syracuse, New York, and he's of Italian descent. And I know what you're thinking, but his character is Muhammad Hassan, and trust me, we'll get there. we will get there. But Capani started wrestling in 2002. Within the first year, he started wrestling for a company called Ohio Valley Wrestling, which is basically the minor leagues for the WWE.
Okay.
Capani spends 2 years in OVW, and then an interesting opportunity comes up. Management from WWE, from the big time, they approach the boss at OVW, and this is, I'm going to say this phrase so many times recording this. This guy, the boss from OVW, is probably worth like a dozen of his own episodes. All you need to know is that the boss from OVW is a man called Jim Cornette. WWE management tells Jim Cornette They want a wrestler who could portray an Arab American, and Cornette offered them up Mark Capani.
Like, we got Mark. Mark can do it.
Never fear. We got Mark.
He's Italian. They won't notice the difference.
He's tan. He's got black hair. We'll just pull the old switcheroo on him. So this is where Mark Capani becomes Muhammad Hassan. Something that is absolutely imperative to understand about what happens next is the power structure of WWE for most of its existence. Long story short, from the early 80s up until just a few years ago, the entire WWE was under the control of one crazy bastard named Vince McMahon. There is currently a Netflix expose about him that like just came out, like I think yesterday or 2 days ago, that's gonna go bananas. Because honest to God, he's so incomprehensibly strange that like... when I say we could do a dozen episodes about Jim Cornette, we could do 100 episodes about Vince McMahon and probably not even begin to scratch the surface, it feels like.
I know a lot about him, and not even willingly. It's just, I see he's in a lot of memes. I see a lot of video clips.
He is, I think, incredibly complex. Well, he's complex in the way that like an animal is complex. You know what I'm saying? Like... there's a lot that goes on within the brain of a tiger, but like ultimately it's kind of like I hunt, I kill, you know? So he's complex, he's bizarre, and he's fucking awful. And he basically ran the entire wrestling industry in America with unchecked and unfettered power for like 4 decades.
Is he still around?
No, thankfully.
Okay.
Well, he's alive. Okay. And again, check out the documentary on Netflix. And maybe one day we'll make a 25-part series about it. WWE was officially sold to an ownership company a couple years ago. It's the same company that owns the UFC. I think that was actually just last year, technically. And shortly after that happened, and Vince's like the control of power was actually out of his hands, he had a sex trafficking scandal amongst other things come out, and they officially gave him the boot.
It's time to go, buddy.
Yep, so now he is officially removed from everything. He serves no official capacity for any wrestling company. He is just a rampant, loose billionaire with a shit ton of money and a lot of charges that he'll probably never do jail time for.
Okay.
We got a couple of those running around at this point. So Vince McMahon, for a majority of 40 years, was judge, jury, and executioner. He was the owner, the chairman, and the head of creative. So he was writing everything. And for long stretches of time, WWE has been the only wrestling company with a national reach. Like, you came up playing the WCW video game. Well, in the late 90s, WWE had a competitor in WCW. That's like a rarity. For almost all of the 2000s, it's just the WWE. And for most of the 80s, it's just the WWE. So this guy, if you wanted to succeed as a wrestler, you had to do it his way.
Okay.
When I say Capani was put in a tough spot, this is what I mean. Vince McMahon pulls you up from the training company and says, hey, man, I want you to go out on TV and you're going to play the role of an evil Arab guy with like 3 years from 9/11. You basically have 2 choices. You do it, which is, morally questionable, or you get fired and just say goodbye to being a pro wrestler forever. That dream dies right there.
Do we know if he had any hesitations or reservations about it, or was he all about it?
He has done some interviews where at the time, he was trying to put himself in the mindset of like, oh, it's an awesome opportunity. I'm going to be on TV. Like, from what I gather, he definitely took it as a step towards his dream. Which it's just part of the mind fuck of pro wrestling at that time. Is like Vince is telling you, hey, you're going to do this. And you're like, oh, yes. Like the Kingmaker has made me a king. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
The first appearances of Muhammad Hassan on WWE TV were in the form of pre-recorded segments that get aired during the show. So you're just watching your weekly program, Monday Night Raw, before 2 guys start wrestling. They show you a video of a character that hasn't appeared on TV, basically to get the audience used to them without them having to be in front of a live audience.
What was the backdrop of these videos? Was he in a cave, perhaps?
Oh, you like. There's a number of backdrops.
Okay.
So throughout the vignettes, Hassan introduces himself in various locations. So in one scene, he's just standing on a suburban street. In one scene, he's in a gas station. And the way this makes sense is WWE tried to put a bit of a twist on an evil, like, foreigner, the evil foreigner gimmick. Typically, when the bad guy is presented as an evil foreigner, they are like super patriotic. Patriotic? That's too many R's.
Is that a wrestling term? I think we need.
Yeah, get that one in the lexicon.
Mm.
So typically, like, evil foreigners, they're presented as being extremely patriotic of whatever country they come from.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
So in the 80s, Nikolai Volkov was a bad guy. He came down wearing a fucking Soviet red USSR jacket. He wore like a Russian issue military cap. What they did with Muhammad Hassan that was different was they presented him as an Arab American born and raised in America. So during the intro vignettes, one of them from a suburban street, he says, "I'm just like you. I was born in America." And then he goes in on, "But ever since 9/11, you guys have been treating me differently." Which, to touch on something that's like a little more serious, is definitely true. Like,
my first thought is that is going to make that problem worse, but he's bringing attention to it. Okay.
Yeah, because there is some discussion now, like if you go poking around on the subreddits and such about Muhammad Hassan, wrestling fandom has this like Stockholm syndrome of like, they just want to believe that the product's not dog shit.
I was going to say, at this point, it sounds like he might be calling attention to Arab American hate in like a positive way. But I feel like we're moments away from putting him out in the wrestling rink and everyone hating him. And encouraging that hate. I feel like that's where we're headed.
Oh, you have fucking nailed it. Because literally the next sentence I have written is, quote, "Now before you go mistakenly thinking there was any nuance here, or that WWE was going to present Hassan as a sympathetic character affected by rampant post 9/11 Islamophobia, that is not the case."
Don't get it twisted. Okay.
Do not get it twisted.
For a second, I thought maybe, but then I thought about it a little further.
And that's the conversation you see now on the subreddits. Is they're like, "Oh, it was genius because he was saying he was putting out a sympathetic thing, and it said more about the fans booing him than it said about his character." Like, people think it was some like 4D chess play where the audience.
We'll just have to dissect if those boos were encouraged, because I feel like maybe they were. But yeah. I don't know where we're going.
Well, once again, you are right on rhythm, because within the first couple sentences of the vignette, right, the first thing he says ever to the WWE audience seeing him, he says something like, "My name is Muhammad Hassan, and I'm just like you. I was born and raised in America." And then, boom, hard pivot straight to referring to the audience as "you people." He says, "You people generalize and stereotype people like me," and it very much immediately pits him at odds with the audience, just from a very basic narrative standpoint.
Okay.
But they will go on to reinforce that you are to boo this man later. But at this start point, after he would say whatever he had to say, in the one, like, he does it when he's in the gas station, the vignette, where he talks about the gas station clerk there who's Arab and how people treat him differently now, which completely out of context sounds like a sympathetic cause.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very intentionally done to make it was a guilt trip for the audience kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
He would then end these vignettes by extending his hands outward, facing up, and he would praise Allah, which in 2004, especially amongst a pro wrestling audience, would draw just a shit ton of boos. So if you look back at the video, and this is one of the more jarring parts of like the research I did for this, you go back and you watch a video, when they play these vignettes, It's pre-recorded segment. He's filmed out wherever he is, but you can hear the audience reacting to him on the TV broadcast. So he literally does some shit where he's just like, praise Allah, and then it's just a fucking rain of boos. Which says way more about the fans than it does about him. After he did this, his manager, which that's kind of another wrestling term, but his manager, Davari, which is basically your manager. The role of manager varies a lot, but it's basically the non-wrestler that comes out with the wrestler. It's kind of like it's another character that's sort of like a prop for you, you know?
Okay. A little supporting role.
Exactly. His manager, Davari, they would say, I'm trying to remember the exact quote, I didn't write it down here, but Hassan would say, and now my manager, Davari, is going to translate this to my Arab brothers. Davari would then translate what he said into Persian, which you better believe the fans booed the shit out of that.
I don't see that going over well in the WWE arena.
Oh, classic. They've done this in not every decade, at least every year. At some point, some bad guy just starts talking in a language that isn't English, and everybody fucking boos the shit out of him. This leads us to an episode of Monday Night Raw, which is WWE's flagship television program. And It's December 13th, 2004. And what's really critical to understand here is this episode of Raw occurs in the Von Braun Center in Huntsville, Alabama. So they went straight to the reddest state in the Union in like less than 3 years from 9/11. So that you can really see where this is going. These are like quasi wrestling terms. It's not necessarily wrestling exclusive, but a segment is basically just a scene on a wrestling show. And then the final word that I got to plug in here is a promo. So a promo is basic, and that's one that also like is probably expanded past the point of just being a wrestling term. But a promo is basically when a wrestler talks on a microphone. Either sometimes they're backstage by themselves, sometimes they're in the ring. But basically, if the wrestler is speaking directly to the audience, it's a promo. On this episode of Raw, the segment begins with a wrestler by the name of Mick Foley, who is something of a legend. I think
I think I've seen him before.
Yeah, you might recognize him also as Mankind, which was it's a gimmick of his from the 90s. So we don't need to go all into Mick Foley, which, trust me, again, I told you I'm going to say this a million times. We could do a ton of episodes on just Mick Foley.
Wait, did he have the sock puppet?
Yes, Mr. Sacco. Yes.
Okay, we'll just leave it there. We'll just leave it there as a...
You may also remember him for getting thrown off the top of the steel cage by The Undertaker. That's another popular one.
I saw that.
Yeah, so he's unfortunately, well, fortunately for him, but unfortunately for us, Mick Foley's not really a key player in the story. But all you really need to know about him at this point is that he's a heroic character. He's a good guy. Or what we call in wrestling, they don't just say good guy and bad guy. They call him a baby face or a face. So good guy wrestler is a face. A bad guy wrestler is a heel. Yeah,
I know that one.
Nice work.
I didn't know the face thing though. The face and heel. That's pretty good. I like that.
Yeah.
Wait, wouldn't the heel like stomp the face?
You know, I think the entire purpose of it, I think part of it, I think it comes from the expression to turn heel and run. Because heels are supposed to be like cowardly. Yeah. Or some of them are. But again, the whole point is this used to be like just a couple of guys at a carnival that knew something the audience didn't. So they couldn't say like, oh, I want to play the villain tonight. Because then everybody knows, you know? Okay. They'll say, hey, I'm gonna turn heel tonight. That kind of thing.
Got it.
So Mick Foley at this point is portraying a face. Mick Foley portraying a face. He comes down to the ring, cuts a promo. So... like I said before, there are wrestlers historically where like John Cena comes out and like salutes, and there's a lot of American flag imagery in what he does. Okay. Hulk Hogan, big America guy, right? Like flag waving, rock music playing, right? Big America guy. Mick Foley is not that guy, but he comes down to the ring, and in this promo, he begins to talk about an upcoming opportunity that he has to perform at an event the WWE calls Tribute to the Troops. It's
so they had to quickly make him the American guy.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. Tribute to the Troops is a show the WWE was putting on. They would do it in Iraq at a military base, essentially to try to provide the troops with like entertainment and levity they do it during the holiday season.
Yep.
So like, oh, hey, you're stationed in Iraq in 2004. That really sucks. Like, why don't you go ahead and watch watch the Undertaker powerbomb like some evil guy right through a table, and it'll make you feel better, you know?
Are they going to send Muhammad Hassan out there?
Thank God. They did not.
Okay.
I think even Vince McMahon had the foresight to see how poorly that could have gone.
All right.
Mick Foley like literally proclaims that he's in Alabama, the reddest state in the union, right? Giga conservative land. And at the start of his promo, he was like, I think a lot of us don't see eye to eye on politics on account of I've got a whole bunch of John Kerry bumper stickers in my garage, and everybody starts booing. Yeah, I don't know. He starts by doing this whole like, I'm a Democrat and you hate me, boo, whatever. But then, in synergy with kind of some level of the...
So they're testing the waters because he's the face, and they're trying to see... Are they trying to see who's hated more?
No.
Does the audience go, well, a Democrat's okay, actually, in comparison?
No, because Mick Foley... First of all, if you think people from Alabama in 2004 would cheer for a Democrat, or they would cheer for a literally just some Arab guy over a Democrat, you're wrong. But what Mick Foley then proceeds to do is say, in these times, something that goes beyond political affiliation is our troops. And everybody starts cheering. He says, if you're a Democrat, if you're a Republican, who cares? Like, the brave men and women of our military are across the seas protecting freedom. He goes into this whole thing about how no matter what kind of American you are, you know, like, God bless our troops, you know?
Just bringing everyone together.
Yeah, so he's getting after it, and then, boom, mysterious music starts to play. And even to the untrained ear, like my own... the music is clearly Arab. So on the Jumbotron, above the stage, a name comes up written in Arabic, and the fans, before a person's even on stage, they are booing. They're booing, how dare you play Arab music, how dare you put Arab words on our screen.
Especially so close to talking about the troops.
Mm-hmm, yeah. And then the broadcasters, the commentators... are sitting they're on the mic, so the fans at home are hearing them going, oh, now what the hell is this? So right here, any doubt that you may have had remaining that they were going to try to do a sympathetic Arab American, it dies right here, because they have already established.
They got him riled up for this.
Yeah, they have got him at odds with, you know, this heroic babyface in the ring, at odds with the Alabama crowd, at odds the commentators are saying, now what the hell is this what is this gobbledygook? So then emerging onto the stage is Muhammad Hassan, as well as his manager, Davari. Something of note is right at the start here is they're both wearing suits. When Hassan would start to wrestle later on, he would come down to the ring in like standard ring attire, like trunks, but he would be wearing like a traditional like Arabic like headpiece. But at the start, he's just wearing a suit. And they literally just stand there on stage. They haven't even raised the microphone to their mouth. And the people are fucking booing them out of the building. In order to parlay this into even more like crowd reaction, as soon as the fans start to quiet down, like even a little bit, Davari just starts speaking Persian and they go fucking nuts.
Oh no.
WWE has instantly put this character in direct contention against literally all of like America. Hassan, then on the mic, he says, just like Mick Foley and the rest of these people, he used to blindly support the troops and blindly support this country until 9/11. And then after 9/11, he was forced to open his eyes to the truth. and that he says that him and people like Daivari are the real victims of this war.
And the crowd started cheering.
He played him like a fucking fiddle, and they're like, wow, man, that's some great insight. At this point, him and Foley go back and forth on the mic, just talking about America and the troops. Every time Foley says anything, the people cheer. Anytime Hassan or Daivari say anything, they boo. And then in a very traditional wrestling segment, right, Foley invites Hassan to step into the ring and basically, like, let's just fucking fight about it. Hassan takes off his suit jacket, his shirt, and may I just say, he's fucking ripped at this point. Like, look up some pictures of Muhammad Hassan. Like, fucking, he is yoked. And Mick Foley, never been a body guy, but especially at this point, he's a little older. So it's like this scrangly, like, flubby old man and this fucking ripped, like, young guy.
Oh, yeah, he's jacked.
Yeah, he's huge, man. So he takes off his suit jacket, he takes off his shirt, and walks to the ring like he's gonna fight him, and this is a classic wrestling move. He declines the fight and starts to walk away, displaying just classic, like, heel, like, cowardice.
Okay.
So the fans start booing, of course, because he's pussing out. So this is literally his first segment on TV. He is already at odds with America. He's also a pussy. And his manager keeps speaking Persian and nobody knows what he's saying, so we just boo people that do that. For this portion here, because then he actually gets into he keeps doing this thing where he comes down and he won't wrestle. He just talks about these things, which, like, nothing frustrates wrestling fans. It's an effective tool that's often used by heels, is you want to see them get their face beat in, but they keep refusing to fight. So then when a big
just
event,
edging the audience along.
Exactly. So then at WrestleMania or at a bigger event, when they finally get the shit beaten out of them, it's like the big payoff that you've been waiting for.
Okay.
So he keeps doing that where he says, oh, I'm not going to wrestle. And then he works his way out of all these matches saying, like, no, I can't fight yet. I'm, this or that. Always making an excuse. And once he finally does start wrestling, they build him up a little undefeated streak. So he starts off his first, like, 12 matches or something like that. He wins all of them. And he does wrestle some notable names. Like, he defeats Chris Jericho pretty early on, and I think that's a pretty known
that name.
Yeah, that's something with wrestling names where I have absolutely no concept of what wrestlers are famous to people that don't watch wrestling. Because I'm like, all right, John Cena, everybody knows John Cena. Or Hogan or Stone Cold. But then I'm like, Chris Jericho? Everyone knows
I know
Chris
the
Jericho?
name, but I don't recognize him upon a Google search.
Yeah, he's a big deal. Chris Jericho, again, we could do tons of episodes about him. He, at one point, wrestles Sergeant Slaughter, who very similar. At one point, Sergeant Slaughter, whose whole gimmick is that he's like an American drill sergeant. He would wear, like, camo down to the ring. At one point, he had a gimmick, which I would love to cover on this show at some point, where he became an Iraqi sympathizer.
Oh my God, Sergeant Slaughter looks amazing.
Oh my God, straight out of Street Fighter, right?
So he got taken out by Muhammad Hassan?
Yeah, this is well past his Iraqi sympathizer phase. He was just like a legend at this point, and he has a match with Hassan that, of course, Hassan wins.
Okay.
Hassan also gained a win over another notable name that I think everybody knows this name, even if you're not a wrestling fan, but it's for the wrong reasons. He picked up a win over Chris Benoit.
I do not know that name.
You don't know the name? Okay, well, this will draw
No.
a memory. Chris Benoit, committed a double murder suicide.
Oh.
Oh my God, you don't know about Chris Benoit?
I don't.
This is like the biggest story in 2007. He goes on like a CTE roid rage, like he kills his wife and his son and then hangs himself on a Bowflex. Is like the shortest possible version of that story.
Was that like edited and directed by McMahon?
Oh, so boy does it just keep getting better, man. Benoit, and again, if we did an episode on this, this is really like, this is maybe the darkest story that wrestling has to offer, the Chris Benoit double murder suicide. But it happens over the course of a weekend. I think the actual like murders happened on Saturday. Benoit doesn't show up to a wrestling event on Sunday that he was scheduled to be at. The police go out, because Benoit never missed shows. They go out and they find the bodies. And so an investigation is opened up. Well, that investigation starts on Sunday when they find the bodies. Well, Monday Night Raw is on every Monday, and they never miss a show. They put on a fucking tribute show for the guy because they had no idea.
Oh.
Yeah. So they have like all of the wrestlers are doing little talking head interviews where they're like, Chris was like, Triple H is sitting there and he's like, Chris was just so kind, and he always, he took younger wrestlers under his wing. They're all saying the nicest stuff about Chris Benoit. And then over the course of that week, we find out, like, yeah, I mean, except for the part where he murdered his wife's son and then hung himself on a Bowflex. It's not good. I can't believe you don't know about Chris Benoit, because that one was like, that got like a lot of national attention.
Big day for Bowflex as well.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah. I think maybe they had to reshoot a couple commercials after that one.
I mean, this guy looks big. That's a
Benoit.
That's a statement of strength to the Bowflex. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was juiced to the fucking gills. This guy was so full of steroids. Anyways, Hassan defeats Chris Benoit at one point. But
one note on him is his brain was so severely damaged it resembled the brain of an 85-year-old Alzheimer's patient.
Chris Benoit's move was he jumped off the top rope and then headbutted the other guy, like noggin to noggin.
That would do it.
Yeah, that would build up a little bit of brain issues over the years. During the 2005 Royal Rumble match, which basically it's a match where wrestlers, they come out one at a time. So it's 30 guys. It starts with 2 in the ring. They come out one at a time, like every minute and a half. And the way that you get eliminated is you get thrown over the top rope and both your feet hit the floor. It's basically the floor is lava and you're trying to throw all the other wrestlers out of the ring.
Okay.
So Hassan's music hits, and at this point there's like 6 or 7 guys in the ring, and it's a free-for-all, right? Only one guy can win the match, so everybody's beating each other up. Hassan's music hits, and he comes out to the ring. Every single wrestler in the ring, faces, heels, all of them. There's multiple bad guys in the ring. They all just stare at him as he enters the ring, and then they all collectively beat the shit out of him and throw him out of the ring together.
Oh. And the crowd was going wild.
Oh, they loved it.
Had to have been.
They loved it. At WrestleMania 21, right now we're just kind of like fast forwarding through the most of like the on-screen career of Hassan until we get to like the big part. So at WrestleMania 21, WrestleMania is WWE's Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Hassan and Daivari, they don't have a match, but they're in a segment with a character named Eugene who absolutely warrants a follow-up episode, which I know I keep saying that I'm going to say more and more, but like Eugene's character, he was a wrestler named Nick Dinsmore. His gimmick was that he was a special needs adult.
Oh my. Okay.
Yep.
So they really cover everything.
They cover everything, man. So what do you think Hassan and Daivari had to do with Eugene in the ring at WrestleMania 21? What would be your guess?
I don't know. I don't even know.
They just start beating the shit out of him.
Okay.
They just beat up the special needs adult. Never fear, because Hulk Hogan's fucking music hits.
Oh, yeah. It's almost like they're like, how could we make the crowd hate him more?
Yeah.
We got this.
So there's a concept in wrestling called heat. And heat is basically what can we do to make the audience care more about you, either positively or negatively. Okay. So beating up a special needs adult is a good way for a heel to get heat. Okay. So yes, every move they make is attempting to get Hassan heat. So Hulk Hogan comes out to the ring, beats the shit out of Hassan and Daivari, and the next month, because Daivari was also a wrestler, so he wasn't always just like the sidekick. Sometimes he would wrestle. It's like the next month at like the pay-per-view, which is like, pay-per-views are like the big special events. Like every week you have a regular TV show, and then for WWE it's basically every month they have a pay-per-view, which is the big event where like title matches happen. And then WrestleMania is like the biggest pay-per-view. So the next month there's like a Hulk Hogan match where like he beats the shit out of Hassan and Daivari. But Daivari is the one that gets pinned, so technically Hassan remains undefeated. Hassan, so from there he goes on to have like multiple like title matches where he'd like wrestle for the US title, and he would win, but it was always by disqualification. So like in wrestling, if you win by DQ, you don't get the title. So they just keep doing all this like bullshit where he doesn't lose, but he doesn't like get a title. But it's all just, again, they're just pumping heat into this guy so that everybody is booing the shit out of this guy. Which takes us to the most bananas part of this story. A segment so controversial, spoiler alert, it leads...
Let me guess. I'll just let me take a guess. They already have their sponsorship with Bowflex, or that's in the works. So does he push a pregnant woman down a stairmaster? Yeah.
No, I can't say that what he does is worse, but the optics are still pretty bad.
Okay.
So Hassan gets switched over from Monday Night Raw to WWE's other primary show, Thursday Night SmackDown. And the thing about
heard of that.
Yeah. The thing about SmackDown is that it did not air live at this time.
Okay.
So it would be recorded earlier in the week and then aired on Thursday, which definitely comes into play with what happens here. So, on this particular episode of SmackDown, it is announced that Muhammad Hassan is going to wrestle The Undertaker. There's a name you gotta know.
Yep.
And the winner of that match gets a future world championship match. So the idea is at a pay-per-view, the big event called the Great American Bash, they'll wrestle and the winner gets a world championship world championship match the next month. To build anticipation for the match between Undertaker and Hassan, this is like a classic tactic because we can't have the Undertaker just beat up Hassan on a regular episode of TV. People are going to want to see that at the pay-per-view. So they have the Undertaker have a match with Daivari instead. So it's just one-on-one Undertaker versus Daivari, who... The Undertaker's like huge. Like that dude's like 6'8", 6'9".
Mm-hmm.
Daivari is like 5'10's probably being generous. He was fit. Like, don't get me wrong. Like if you met Daivari, you'd probably be like, this guy looks like ripped. He's sharp. But in the wrestling world, specifically in WWE, like 5'9", you may as well be 5 foot flat as far as Vince is concerned.
Okay.
So Undertaker has a match with Daivari. The match lasts only a single minute, during which Daivari repeatedly tries to run away, but Hassan would force him back into the ring. So Daivari literally like runs out of the Undertaker's grasp, slides out of the rope and tries to get away, and Hassan grabs him and throws him back in the ring. Undertaker defeats Daivari very easily, but as he does so, Muhammad Hassan is up on the stage and he's laughing, and the camera keeps showing him laughing and laughing. Hassan then begins to pray, and as he prays, 5 men wearing tan, like, camo pants, like desert issue camo military pants.
Okay.
Black shirts and black ski masks come out. They go to the ring where they proceed to assault the Undertaker. These masked wrestlers who, I guess if I'm not like communicating the visual, they're terrorists.
I think I've seen the clip of exactly what you're describing. They're like just like kicking him relentlessly.
Yeah, they're all just standing around beating the shit out of him. They start choking him with fucking piano wire at one point. So once all of these big ripped guys in straight up terrorist like outfits, they beat the shit out of the Undertaker, they choke him out with the piano wire. Hassan then comes down into the ring and he puts the Undertaker in his signature submission move, which is called the camel clutch, which basically every Arab character in the history of the WWE has used the camel clutch as their finisher. as Hassan chokes the Undertaker out with the camel clutch, these 5 masked men drop to their knees and they begin to pray, as Hassan has done with their hands up, like praising Allah.
And what might the crowd be doing at this moment in time?
This may shock you to know, but they are booing relentlessly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they don't see the.
I had a suspicion.
Yeah, they don't see the sympathetic side of being a post 9/11 Arab American, on account of, at this point, Hassan is literally conducting a terrorist attack on the Undertaker.
I was gonna guess that to really hype the crowd up, they were gonna reveal 9/11 too, but it's. I mean, this is sounding like that's almost the angle they went.
They should have shot a little vignette where Muhammad Hassan was on one of the planes, and and then he told the other guys, he's like, "Excellent job, brothers," and he jumps out with like a parachute, you know.
Mm-hmm. They came close to that.
Well, they do the next best thing, which is that the masked men they picked up Davari and they carried him over their head. So they're like, all 5 of them are holding him up, and they carry him out of the arena like he was a fucking human sacrifice. Now, obviously, that segment is pretty horrific because an Arab American, who at this point that part of the gimmick is completely lost, he's just an Arab dude, conducted a straight up terrorist attack, including a piano wire choke on the Undertaker. It's bad enough, but here's where it gets worse.
Oh no.
Like I said, SmackDown was pre-recorded at this point. So This episode of SmackDown was filmed on a Monday and it aired on Thursday.
Okay.
That Thursday happened to be July 7th, which, if you're putting the pieces together, means it aired the same day as the 7/7 bombings.
Oh no.
The London 7/7 bombings. So they film it like 4 days in advance. The 7/7 bombings they happen, I believe, in American time. It was in the morning. So the afternoon comes around and WWE has this pre-filmed important part of their program where there's a terrorist attack.
You just know Vince McMahon caught word of that happening and he was so happy.
I could just hear him right now going, "But it's such good shit."
Oh man, he was for sure happy about that. That's crazy.
So in America and in Canada, the segment was aired, but there was several like advisory warnings where they were like, "Hey, this is it's a fictitious event, this was filmed beforehand." Like they put a shit ton of like, just so you know, there's some disturbing content on this episode. Other TV markets like Australia, they completely removed the segment. But for America and Canada, this fucking thing aired the night of the 7/7 bombings. It may not shock you to know that SmackDown's broadcaster was not happy about this. It drew national attention from various news outlets. And UPN, who at the time was the broadcaster for SmackDown, said, "Hey, we're going to get involved and we're going to monitor the situation directly." Which in this case means UPN went to WWE and said, "You keep that fucker off television or we're going to fucking freak out."
They're all set up for like the biggest revenge.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure the audience is just foaming at the mouth to watch The Undertaker destroy this guy. Does that mean they don't get to do it?
Over the next several weeks, so something here is, and this is really like inside baseball, I guess, but like Monday Night Raw, I believe, is on the USA Network at this point. SmackDown's on UPN, but the pay-per-views are carried independently through like in pay-per-view providers.
Yep.
So like SmackDown's broadcaster saying keep him off TV. So what WWE has to do over the next like 3 weeks here is every week they have to explain his absence. The commentators would say Hassan has refused to appear tonight due to unfair treatment. So Hassan does ultimately have his big match with The Undertaker, but from the terrorist attack segment over the next like 3 weeks, he's not on TV to promote the match. So like the Undertaker has to come out and be like, I'm gonna beat the shit out of Muhammad Hassan, and like.
So they said keep him off. Like he can't even do a. Here, I'm about to use a promo.
Nice. Oh, you are fucking in, dude. You are in.
He can't even appear to do a promo?
No, nothing. He's not supposed to be on TV.
Okay.
UPN said we don't want to have him, and I guess I'm assuming USA told them don't put him on Raw either, because every week they just explain for a new reason why Muhammad Hassan isn't there. So they have their match at the Great American Bash, the big special pay-per-view. During his entrance, Hassan is carried out to the ring by the masked men, like the terrorists. They were like, no, these guys are really good. Let's keep them around. And they carry him out on like, I don't know what you call it, like the chair that you like would carry a king on. You know, they're all like holding it. So they bring him out for that. Ultimately, however, the Undertaker would win the match, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do at the end of the match is the Undertaker power bombs Hassan straight through the stage. Like they rigged up part of the stage to collapse. So the Undertaker power bombs him through the stage. And then like it's classic wrestling trickery. He power bombs him through the stage, and then the camera comes up to the Undertaker as they quickly like take all the padding away from where he landed, and then the camera cuts to Hassan, who's like laying on the concrete ground, you know. In storyline, this caused like really severe injuries. So they were like, yeah, he broke his fucking neck or something, so he's gonna need significant time to like recover. Which was just them writing him off, because that's the last time Muhammad Hassan was ever on WWE programming.
With the power of the networks, the Undertaker just took him right out.
Yeah, fueled by the power of UPN, the Undertaker power bombed Muhammad Hassan right out of canon. So there is, to be fair, there is a contingent of wrestling fans who argue that like, hey man, you know, it's an entertainment program, and they, you know, we understand the distasteful part of it, but this was a bad guy who was at the absolute peak of his villainy, right? Like the crowd was waiting to see him get beat up. He's never been hotter, and the WWE has to like pull the plug on him like right there. Mm-hmm. And so there are people that are like, yeah, that's kind of a bummer, because it was getting a lot of heat, you know, for what it's worth. He was getting a huge reaction every time he came out, you know. So at this point, Hassan and Daivari are sent back to developmental, with the idea being like, maybe we can tweak the gimmick or give him a new gimmick and that kind of stuff. And down the line, Daivari does make a return to WWE TV in a largely modified role. But unfortunately, this was the end of Mark Capani on WWE programming. He never made it back to TV as Muhammad Hassan or as any other character. After his release, Capani would retire from wrestling altogether, which is not extremely rare at this point. Like I said, WWE is the only show in town, and if they can't have you or if they won't have you, your option is like wrestling in high school gyms at this point. So yeah, he hangs him up. Rumors went on to circulate that WWE had big plans for Hassan, saying, oh, they were going to make him the world champion at one point. But to be honest, that kind of rumor is like extremely common in WWE, especially around a character that has a ton of heat. They're like, oh, they had such big plans for him. They say it every time.
I had no idea he went on. I've seen the video clip of his very first like on stage appearance. I had no idea he went on. They brought him far enough to like almost be the world champion.
Yeah, he was on TV for like, I want to say it was a full year. Because it was from December of 2004 until, late summer, fall of 2005. So yeah, he was on TV for like 9 months. So it wasn't like a complete flash in the pan. If you are looking for a happy ending, there kind of is one here. After leaving the WWE and retiring from wrestling, Capani went back to school, and he ultimately became a teacher. And he has been a principal and an administrator in schools in New York.
Look at that.
So imagine that. Imagine your school's principal having at one point led a terrorist attack that choked out the Undertaker.
Yeah, I'm on his Instagram right now. He's just like a pretty normal dude now. He is a jacked school teacher.
Yeah, he's a big
He's
buff
still
boy.
ripped.
I don't know if this is like fucked up to say, but so when they had him in full character, in like full costume and all that, like, I don't know, he passes the eye test. He could be Arab, like they tricked me. Yeah, that's everything I've got on Muhammad Hassan. That's the story of the guy that choked out the Undertaker with piano wire the day of the 7/7 bombings.
Yeah, it makes me wonder what that did for overall Islamophobia in the United States.
Cannot have helped.
Oh, it could. Yeah, I also need the behind the scenes decisions in like the writing room when it comes to what angles they're taking, what they're gonna do. Like I wonder what ideas got scrapped. I wonder what ideas they decided were too much.
Oh my God, there are well, I guess specifically for Hassan, that would be really interesting to know, because I mean, I know of some of the more famous ideas that were scrapped in other storylines, but yeah, Muhammad Hassan, like, you can only imagine what Vince McMahon was like cooking up.
I
wonder how many, like, are there really not? I assumed there was like a billion Chris Benoit like podcasts about what happened. Maybe there's not. Maybe we need to do the Benoit episode.
I'll reach out to Bowflex.
Oh Jesus! Keep bringing it back. I shouldn't have told you about the Bowflex. I didn't think that was
such a crazy detail.
Yeah, I guess I didn't have to include it. I guess I could have just said like he killed his wife and son and then hung himself. I don't know why I had to tell you it was a Bowflex.
It seemed important.
I guess. Well, I don't know, man. I want to get my feet under me before I start covering the Chris Benoit double murder
Unlike
suicide.
Chris Benoit at the Bowflex.
Oh, no. I keep falling for it.
This segment was brought to you by Bowflex.
Oh.
Use code WRASTLING at checkout.
Oh. Thanks for joining No Pods Barred for our very first episode. I'll be posting this one and future episodes on both Spotify and YouTube. And I can't believe this is a sentence I'm going to say in 2024, but the best place for feedback is actually going to be the YouTube comment section, because I haven't set up any socials or anything like that for the pod. So check us out on both platforms. We're just tiny little guys out here. Just a tiny little pod with literally zero following on launch. So if you enjoyed it, be a friend, tell a friend. And until next time, have a nice day.